Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good to see all of you. We'll get started in a couple minutes. I'm going to keep letting folks in from the waiting room. Can you hear me okay? Thanks, Lance.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, Eric. How are you? Shelley Sweeney.
Oh, hey, Shelley. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks. Thanks for
Good.
showing up. We had about 50 people RSVP, which was awesome. So I'm just going to let them keep coming in. Hi, everyone. Just joined us. Thanks for being here. We're just gathering, get folks jump into the waiting room, and we'll get started in just a second. Appreciate everybody joining. I'm going to keep letting folks in. I'm particularly looking for our folks from the city, but I know they have a busy day today, so we'll get started in just a second. I am going to go ahead and thank you all for joining. If you're not familiar or haven't been a part of Revitalize Portland Coalition event or meeting in the past, welcome. We're glad you're here. We really just want to have an informational session today. We do have monthly meetings of our membership that you're welcome to sign up for and join. You can also always follow up with me directly or one of our board members. So we're thrilled that you can be here. We're the commercial real estate voice that's really working to kind of bring all the voices together around improving conditions and the situation downtown in Portland. So really, it's a very, very collaborative effort, obviously. So we're thankful you could be here. One of the reasons we decided to have this meeting is I know we've seen, I've heard a lot in conversations with different folks of people's kind of frustration and exhaustion around quality of life issues in their neighborhoods and on their properties, in their environment. But I've also been a part of this reporting process that the city has added and is kind of adding emphasis to around responding to some of those questions and concerns. So what we thought we would do, and I think Anne just got on, which is great. Anne, I'll let you settle in and not introduce you yet. But we just wanted to kind of give have the folks from the city kind of give an update over just how to do reporting, why it's important, and then what you can expect in terms of, response, follow-up, that sort of thing. I felt like it was far better coming from their voice than us trying to translate it. So we hope you'll get something out of this, particularly the how to, kind of report on issues. And I think we're mostly focused on issues that are, kind of non-criminal quality of life issues, graffiti, trash, tent, the kind of things we see across the board. So we do have a document that they shared that I will put in the chat so that you can take a look at it with kind of some of the information that they're going to present on. Anne, are you welcome? Good to see you again.
Yes, you too.
Twice in one day. I'm doing double duty with the meeting room and the meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to you if that's okay. I don't just introduce anybody you've got here, and just, if you don't mind starting with an update, that'd be great.
Are there too many people to do introductions?
Probably.
Can you give me just a little?
Oh, yeah.
Just brag about who you all are.
Why don't I do this? I'm going to call on some folks so you can get a kind of a sense. Well, that's dangerous. They may not be ready. So by and large, as I look across the membership that are here, we've got some folks that are property managers specifically for a good number of properties, both downtown. Mostly this is, maybe commercial, office, manufacturing, industrial. I see a couple of execs from development companies that kind of do all the different services. I see folks from like Matt Bielstein, who does a whole host of kind of attached environmental and security services for different companies. So I'd say, and then I see a couple folks that are kind of community, are kind of attached community advocate friends or neighborhood group friends. So, I'd say generally these are folks from across the commercial real estate spectrum. That all have, some level of interest to be involved and to be helpful. That's what we try to lead with, is that we want to be part of it.
And you all represent properties or interests across the city, not just
really
downtown,
across,
correct?
Yeah, it can be across the city, it can be across Oregon, it can be in other states. I mean, I'm actually based at Schnitzer, and we have properties in 7 or 8 states. So, we kind of focus our efforts on downtown, but obviously the whole region is important to us.
Great. I think the only other person that's going to be joining this morning would be, or this afternoon, is Eric Zimmerman from the mayor's office. And so he's just here in case you all have questions that are sort of outside of my purview. He's here to be able to respond to some of those. He said he might be a few minutes late. He was walking back from another meeting. So just to introduce myself, my name is Ann Hill. I'm the Deputy Director of the Public Environmental Management Office, or PEMO. We were set up through one of the Mayor Wheeler's emergency declarations. There are several of them. One is around houseless community and camping. One is around gun safety, and then everything that's sort of not gun violence and not camps is us, but we do recognize that they're kind of Venn diagram concentric circles. So we pinch it for and coordinate on those issues. The reason is because the current form of government, sometimes to do something like clean up a camp or address a nuisance in an area, you need 5 or 6 different bureaus and maybe Metro or the county. And what we do is work to just sort of be the one-stop shop so that we can help facilitate some of those coordination efforts and escalate as needed through ours. The way that we work, we're a very small office. We have 4 folks, and then we collaborate with other programs across the city. So specifically, we run 12 problem solver meetings across the city on a bi-weekly, is that right? Bi-weekly or bi-monthly? Bi-monthly basis.
That's twice every 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Or just twice a month? Twice
Yes.
okay.
Yep. So the meeting downtown, there's 2 meetings for the central city. One is for those neighborhoods that are north of Burnside, and one is for those neighborhoods south of Burnside. And essentially those are an hour, but every other meeting across the city, there are 30-minute meetings. And the idea behind these is it's the punch list. You all come with where the issues are and we solve those problems. So it's not a sort of normal city meeting where we're coming with presentations. It's really based on that sort of emergency command model that sort of grew out of like when there's a flood or there's a fire, like these are where our issues are, these are where we're solving. As we stabilize different parts of the city, we are moving into actually addressing sort of more activation type issues, because that's what's going to keep nuisances from happening, or what I say shenanigans. So in industrial areas, I call that more stabilizing. So you might see hardscape fencing because they aren't really appropriate areas for people to congregate and activate. But then there's other parts of the city where having activation is more important. So I think the most immediate activation some of you saw was the starbursts that were installed in the parks around the downtown, and the large lighting sculptures that were in the south park blocks. That was not part of the light festival. Those were 3-month installations that we placed to bring light to the downtown. And then we recently added lighting to Old Town, and we are now moving across the city. So those are some of the things you've seen. With that, I don't know, do people have questions? I can just start rattling off how to report if you want to start there, or do people have questions about either PEMO or the office or problem solver meetings?
Maybe quick questions and then we can move into reporting. I do think Eric's joined us. So Eric Zimmerman from the mayor's office is also here to put him on the spot. Thanks for joining. There he is. So any questions so far from anybody? All right. You want to roll on in?
Dick, it looked like.
Yeah. Mr. Perkins, unmute.
I'm just curious, as you go through these activation issues that you are taking, just telling us how it's how the success of those is measured and reported.
Great. Well, specifically the lighting, I'm working on that right now. I mean, some of it's sort of more, quantitative than qualitative, more subjective. So I've been working, for example, like with Clean and Safe, like were the calls reduced in Chapman and Lonsdale squares when the starbursts were installed, right? When we hung the canopy of light and installed the disco ball behind the Schnitzer in Schmansky Square there, the manager from South Park and the residents of the adjacent condos said instead of there being shenanigans at night, people were getting married, they were dancing, they were taking pictures, they were actually visiting to see it. So when we installed the lights in Old Town, the street tree lights, the police said that it was the first time that they could see down the sidewalk 4 blocks. We've noticed that they have not pulled any of the amount of vandalism we've seen. No one's pulling those lights out of the trees because I think all of us instinctively, they look nice, right? So it's a safety measure, but it also is a livability. So that's the anecdotal metrics. I am working with PBOT to see if I can actually get light reading off of them, but again, I don't know how scientific it is. So, yeah.
Other questions?
Yep.
Anybody else? Before we,
What actions are you taking over the next 2 months?
oh, there you go. You can see it. Cool.
I can't see the whole thing though.
Oh, really? Okay. It just says, I'd like to know what actions you anticipate taking over the next 3 months. What changes will we see in the downtown area?
And I think the things that I'm working on specifically, and then if there's anything that you're interested in. So we've done quite a bit around stabilizing the plaza around the car, what's known as the car wash fountain down next to Big Pink. Working closely. So that fountain just got filled in by the Water Bureau. So it's no longer like a cesspool. And
I don't see the Unico folks here, but they're very thankful for that.
Okay.
We've been talking with them for a while. So anyway,
we've
go ahead.
added lighting there, and we're Prosper's partnering to make sure that we do some specific activation kind of activities there on Wednesdays. We've also facilitated Clean and Safe is now permitted, and they are now basically activating Directors Park. So you will see there, the sidewalk ambassadors are actually going to be working out of that kiosk. They're going to be doing pop-ups there. They're going to be responsible with Clean and Safe for keeping that clean with, graffiti removal, making sure the plants come back. I think we're going to install that big disco ball with up into the canopy there. They're going to have like new street furniture. So you're going to see that square really more activated than in the past. We're working with Ankeny Alley to connect sort of Dante's and Ankeny Alley up to Unico on 5th. We're doing some street painting. We're going to add more street tree illumination to that core. And then I'm going to be working, it's going to be hard right now, but I want to get the Waterfront Park. The way that we were able to put those starbursts in was to actually use the spotlight poles to add GFCI. So we're going to get that so we can get more illumination through the park adjacent to the bike path. And then finally, we're going to illuminate both Fire Station 21, the trees, that's the base of the Hawthorne Bridge on the east side of the river where people come over on their bikes. We're going to have that all lit with the trees. And we're also going to light Fire Station 1, which is right on Old Town and NATO. And we're going to light the square right behind them. So those are some of the things we're doing with lighting. We are also doing quite a bit of work with Old Town Community Association. We just removed their that Plaza Street because it was actually inviting more shenanigans. We've been doing a lot with the entertainment district, doing some things with stabilizing parking lots. And I think finally, we've been working with PBOT on cleaning the parking garages, getting the stairwells cleaned out more regularly, and revamping the security contract. I don't know if there are other specific items people would like addressed.
I have a question. I'm
Sure.
wondering, you're referring to shenanigans and, obviously we're aware of all the graffiti, et cetera. And I'm just curious, does the city or the police have a sense of, is this a group of people that are organized, that are involved with doing a lot of the shenanigans, or, I mean, what is the sense about what's happening overall in the city?
I'll take a stab, but then I'm gonna just punt this to Eric from the mayor's office. But I would say, like with you think about, I think with graffiti, I think there are multiple things happening depending on where you work and where you live. So I think some of it is it started during the pandemic with bored teenagers out just zooming around on streets that didn't have a lot of activity, and there wasn't a lot of things being cleaned up. So then it just reminds folks that you should just go out there and do more. I think there are some elements that are sort of connected to sort of larger criminal activities. I know that recently when they went, I think that was in the paper, when they went and arrested somebody, they realized there was also like a gun printing, 3D printing sort of gun operation going. So there's clearly that. So, and I know that there is work being done with the police on that. I think Measure 110 passing and fentanyl and the new methamphetamine coming in has like been its own circus in terms of sort of how to address that. And then we have just the camps. And then what gets adjacent to not all the camps, but some of them is then you've got connections to things like catalytic converters and chop shops, and there's all those pieces. So I know that there's been a lot of work done by the police in sort of retail missions, car theft missions. There's some graffiti and then some work around the drugs specifically with dealers. And I don't know, Eric, if you have anything more to add.
I would just, a lot of the livability stuff that we're talking about is just a general decline of a social contract, right? That antisocial behavior is something that is, it doesn't take a whole lot of folks to have a huge impact on a geographic area like downtown. And the interface of the fentanyl and P2P meth as it interfaces with the homeless community as well as others in the community kind of blurs a lot of lines in terms of some of this stuff. And it really has tapped our system in a world where our tools to enforce against what are considered in the grand scheme of criminal justice low-level items, where these might be arrestable and bookable types of offenses in the state of Oregon, they may not be in Multnomah County, because the sheriff in each county has the ability to set booking criteria based on what they think they can take in. And in a world where Multnomah County is decreasing its jail beds and these low-level crimes are going up, we're out of whack right now. And so you have to commit theft 2 or higher to be booked in our community. That's different than what state law says. So a lot of the stuff that would normally be nipped quickly and at least removed from the situation, which sometimes is all it takes for cooler heads to prevail, is that somebody is removed. Some of those tools aren't available. But Anne's right. Some of the retail theft stuff and the car stuff is highly organized, right? That part is, and we are combating that with the DA, with the sheriff, and with our own police officers. We created a task force specifically for those 2 items. But that doesn't solve some of the other stuff that we see in terms of when you're walking around downtown and the pettiness that I used to, I'm trying to find a better word than petty vandalism, because when you have a $10,000 window pane broken out 5 times, that's certainly not petty, but I think you get what I mean by that. And so whenever we can, we try to pick up folks, but it is remarkable with as many cameras as exist out there. And we all think that when we install a Ring camera or something like that, that it actually gives us a suspect, and it really does not, unless it is fine-tuned like a Zoom call like this, and you have an idea who that person is. And so a lot of these types of things may be caught on camera, but they're not something we have anybody to go after and hold accountable, which is a real unfortunate piece there.
I wonder, that's a great answer from both of y'all. Ann and Eric, what do you say to people that, when you hear, well, I just don't even report anything anymore, or, when you got to run into that exasperation?
I mean, it's hard, right? I'm in this every day, right? So whether it's, 4511 off of Hawthorne, or there's an entrenched camp next to a vacant building, or you're the Sonesta Hotel and you're across from 4th and Washington, or you're out in Lentz. These problems are across the city, and they are, I mean, the good news is the Rose Festival happened, the Starlight Parade happened, right? The good news is, like, you go through downtown, I drove through the other, it's like, it's not that bad, like, considering what it was, right? And now when people are like, why is there a tent? You're like, one tent, you should have seen what it was like, right? So that just reminds me that we are making progress. But yeah, the fatigue, I understand the fatigue. I will say that we are not to a place as a city where we have,
Uh-oh.
She was about to say something so profound. She
She
froze.
was.
Look at that. I will pick up the baton and
Thank
see
you,
where
Eric.
Ian comes back in. I think most of us have had to question in the recent years whether or not a situation we encountered was worthy of a 911 call. I think a lot of us know what that feeling feels like, and we question ourselves about, is this an appropriate use of emergency? And I also think it is worth sharing that the police and, like, our neighborhood response sheriff, or a sergeant, excuse me, our neighborhood response sergeant constantly is asking folks, please call 911 when you think that if a police officer arrives before this situation is over, will it make a difference in the outcome? That's very different than I think a lot of us think about, is this emergency, right? Life, limb is how I think of emergency, but actually what the police are asking us is, will their getting to the scene quicker make a difference in the outcome of the crime? So an example of that is a person who is experiencing a breakdown in the midst of, I saw it yesterday, they're challenging a MAX train while sitting in the tracks. Like, that's a 911 call, right? And we may not think that, or we may have sold ourselves a different bill of goods, but that is a 911 call in our community. It needs to be. Whereas if you walk out to your car in the morning and you notice that a window has been broken out of your vehicle and you have no idea who a suspect could be, that is not a 911 call. That is appropriate for non-emergency. And I think those kinds of things help us. An active drug dealing site, while we have tons of them and we could go after those all day long, if you have a constant going on of something like that, I think you should call 911, and the police would tell you the same thing. Call 911, because their interaction there could make a difference. And with that one, I think it's one of our harder examples because we get that call all the time. But them being able to come by, or at least know that this corner has become the point of business, which is how this goes in our community right now, is helpful for them to know. And they constantly have to remind the community, we do not know, nor can we attack the problems that you do not make us aware of. And I think that it helps me when I do the consideration of my own, is this a 911 call or a non-emergency? That helps. So I would say that. And I took the baton because you froze, like, right as you're about to say something really cool.
My internet went out. I don't know, all of a sudden, so I'm now on my phone. My apologies. Like, all of a sudden I was kicked out. Oh, now it says join with computer. Yeah, so I'm sorry for that. I will also say, I don't know where we left off, but I will say something with the fentanyl and the drugs that I've been thinking a lot about, that I know I've been working with some folks in Old Town, is, if we think about what we keep hearing is, drugs are now legal. Well, cigarettes are legal if you're over 21 and you don't smoke in front of a window, and you don't smoke in front of doors, and you don't smoke inside, and you can smoke marijuana or whatever you can do with marijuana if you're over 21 and you can't do it in a park. And we can drink alcohol if we're over 21, but not with an open container. So you can't smoke fentanyl in front of an operable window. You can't smoke fentanyl. You shouldn't be able to smoke fentanyl in public. You shouldn't be able to smoke whatever the MPM amphetamine are, right? So we have been working to see if there's a way. That's not a total solution to the issue, but it is a health issue, right? And I think a lot of properties, we don't put non-smoking signs up anymore because everybody knows behaviorally not to smoke, nor do we have signs that say no open containers. Maybe we need to start putting out those signs again, right? And it's a deterrent. It just makes it more uncomfortable. So we're kind of attacking all of these issues from sort of multiple angles. From, lighting plus deterrent plus reporting to, really just continue to stay diligent.
Hey, Eric, I want to add to it. I got a message. What about if the police, or nobody calls you back if you do make a report? And there you go. Thanks. So I think it's really important that we just admit that we have dropped the ball as a city when it comes to kind of our interactions with the public on some of these types of non-emergency calls, or how long it takes, or if you're on 911 or if you're on non-emergency, how long do you stay on, but then also the communication on the back end. What I would say is we are in an effort right now to basically kind of change a culture and say that kind of negative interaction or lack of interaction by our own folks of not calling folks is having an undue impact on folks and whether they have faith that the system works. So a little bit of staying on us and keeping us accountable, but we are also asking our officers like that is we need you to make contact with folks, even if it's after the fact. And I will say, it may just be a person saying, here's your case number, I'm officer so-and-so, we have no suspect, and it's not a great outcome, but at least letting someone know that their complaint or report has been received and we don't have any lead on who stole a bike, but it actually does go a long way. We're overcoming that. We are hiring more officers, and in a world where most patrol officers in Portland spend their entire shift going from one 911 call to the next. Very few are able to engage in what we would call proactive policing, where they're initiating their own involved types of stops, where they're able to do the deeper work with the community. And so our neighborhood response teams are the best positioned to do the follow-up. And if you have had interactions with your neighborhood response team, I hope you've had that kind of interaction. And then it remains a hurdle for us. So please continue to make the report. Please let us know if you have a bad interaction. Please, particularly if it's non-emergency, allow a lot of time to pass before maybe you hear from that, because a non-emergency, it can be a 12-hour thing. Like the next shift picks up something that's still holding from the previous, and they just kind of triage as they go through. That's a reality on the ground. But we want to know it if you're having that bad interaction, or if your building managers, your employees who are calling non-emergency are not hearing back later. We want to know that. We need to fix that, because one of our biggest efforts in the mayor's office is faith that the system works again. And we know that some of that piece of the fabric has deteriorated over the last several years. So it's a plea and a promise.
Yeah,
Eric?
Go ahead, Shelley.
I wanted to just state that I had a non-emergency situation recently, and the police showed up within 10 minutes.
That's great.
And then the non-response, whatever the next level is for, what's it called? It was a situation with a houseless person, drug addiction situation. What's the next level? Who shows up? The people.
You're talking like a PSR type of situation, the Portland Street Response. Is that what you mean?
So then they showed up, and then the police showed up a second time, and the police officer spent time having conversation with myself and a lot of the other homeowners in my area, kind of helping to explain some of these issues and answering a lot of questions. So there's some faith building for you that it is working. And then the other comment / question that I had is, this is the thing that I find so hard, and maybe other people might be able to relate to this. As we've been going through all of this in Portland with I'm seeing houseless people all the time, and people that are really struggling with addiction, and all the other things that are kind of felt like our city being torn down. It really, the hardest part for me personally has been that I feel like I'm losing some of my own humanity. And I feel like other people might be able to resonate with that as well. And I'm just wondering if the city has thought at all about something where we can engage more numbers of regular citizens, if you will, and, this is so corny, but this is Portland, like a collective, visualization or dreaming of what we want our city to be versus always feeling like we're everything's broken. Like if people could have a voice, even if it's you belong to a giant organization, you go through these team building type of things where nothing happens, but at least you have a voice, that where it starts. So I don't know, this is Portland. We do things differently here.
Yeah.
So
Shelley,
has anything like this been entertained?
I think it's interesting because, depending, my experience running the problem solver meetings around the city, depending on where you are, you're having a very different experience. If Portland is everyday normal Portland, or if Portland is a really hard place to be in, or if you're having those feelings of losing your humanity. And so I think there's different, so for example, downtown, there's some of that visioning, I think, going on with the every Wednesday, working to get folks downtown and having activities and things for people to do. I think in different parts of the city, I've really found that the small business owners around the city are just fatigued. The ones, and I see that because Division Clinton doesn't have a business association anymore. Brooklyn doesn't have a business association. And a lot, and we rely on those, right? We need those those corridors to be vibrant, right? Because that's, as we lift up and other places around the city we're looking to incubate. And it's because they're fatigued. They don't have time, right? They have so much struggle just keeping their doors open. They can't spend time in yet another meeting trying to organize something or apply for a grant. And that's where I see a lot of our space is actually on the grounds helping them, right? So they can get to a place, Shelley, where they can vision. Because right now they're too fatigued to vision.
I think, Shelley, that's one of the things I've taken away from these expediting and then the problem solving calls. I mean, I love your idea. It's beyond, just responding to the issues, but I do see kind of it as a silver lining. And this one reason I wanted to encourage folks to report and to raise these issues, because I'm actually seeing, we're building community and conversation among all these different departments and, folks that are involved, neighborhood folks. And then we're seeing results, or we're seeing response, come back. And so there's this accountability piece where I do think it's more positive in that space. So it's one of the reasons I want to encourage you all to keep raising your voices around, what you're seeing everywhere.
And I would encourage, any of you are invited to any of the problem solver meetings. It depends where your properties are. So what you can do is, if you want to, my email, if Eric wants to share my email, I'm happy then to connect you with, I have property out in Lentz. I have, wherever you have property, we can hook you up with that problem solver meeting so that you can, it's just a Zoom call. I mean, it's a Teams call. They're 30 minutes. So the ones downtown are an hour just because there's more of you that participate. And I think with the reporting's also really helpful because, for example, with the camps, there's 800 camps across the city at any given moment. So when they meet every day, it's literally like an ER. They are triaging who they're moving when and why and how. And if they don't know there's a camp there, then they don't know to remove it. They do rate the camps, not the camps, but the site. So is it near a school? Is it on a main corridor? Is it blocking a sidewalk? Is there potential criminal behavior going on? Even if there's garbage, even if there's biohazards, maybe if they're not going to remove it right away, they can certainly go out and we can get the trash cleaned up or the biohazards removed. So it is critical. I met last week with the Oregon Clinic Providence TriMet Gateway out at 99th. We are working with Kaiser to figure out a parcel on 102nd and Weidler. So we are working across the city with different businesses. I've done a lot with the Central East Side. I'm working right now with Gordon's Fireplace, right? So I would encourage you all to, I know it's hard to report and you feel like nothing ever happens, but it's vitally important because that's also how we kind of try to aggregate as a city through budgeting, how much money we need to allocate. And if it's not reported, then we don't know it's there. So aside from the police piece that we've talked about, if you don't want to report, call 311 as the last response. Like you can call 311 and they will essentially do the report for you. So, you know, if all else fails, please do that.
That's livability type reports, not crime.
Yes,
Police.
yeah, it's crime reports you have to do through the police, but like garbage,
Graffiti, campsites, vehicles,
all of that. You can do all of that through just calling 311 if you don't want to make the report. And I would say with campsites, it's important to report pretty consistently and from different people. So not like every day, but every few days, because that also keeps it moving. The only thing I'll remind you about camping is when you move a camp and they don't want to go into a shelter, they're just going to move to someplace else, right? So it's like you literally are moving populations. And then we too work with, is it private property? Because we can't remove a camp from your property, right? So is it private property? Is it public property? Is it city property? Is it state property? Currently, we don't have any more funding until July 1 to remove anything off of ODOT property. So there's no money there to do it. So
But
it's they're going to sit.
To add something from my own nerdy experience.
Yeah.
Like I'd say don't hesitate. Like we had some areas that we were pretty sure was not City of Portland property. It was ODOT and right away. And yet I still reported it to Ann and Eric's team. They then, I mean, I got actual feedback. Actually, they actually were able to do something about some of the they're pretty dangerous sites. So that, I mean, I think that's the other thing here is like, I overthink things clearly, but like, you know, you should still throw it in there. And that's what I've appreciated. The other thing, I threw a spreadsheet in the chat too. If you want to just send stuff to me, to us at Revitalize, we're happy to submit it too.
Sure.
It's nice for us to know about it because then if it comes up and we can follow up on it in the problem solving meeting too. But just trying to make it as easy as possible for all of us.
Hey, Eric, the other thing here too, and it kind of gets to Sandy's question a little bit ago about what to expect for the next few months. And maybe in the first 10 minutes that I missed, you guys covered it, but Ann just mentioned, like when we report a camp, when it does get abated and cleaned up, often they just move a couple blocks down. And that's a reality on the ground. But at the same time, on July 1st, our time, place, and manner ordinance will go into effect, which will fundamentally change the way in which we approach the establishment of camps, 8 to 8. Ann, can you mute yourself? I'm getting a lot of feedback from yours. 8 to 8, not having tents out on the public structures, public right of way. And at the same time, the mayor's office is opening our first sanctioned campsites in July as well. And so those are the areas that we want people to go to, because the guarantee if they go there is that they will not be swept and cleaned up, et cetera, because it creates a stability in a location that is sanctioned. And so while it becomes more difficult to do what we see as today's version of camping, I think a lot of us who've been in Portland a long time remember a time when people might sleep, but then they cleaned it up before the daylight really, or kind of in those morning hours. And then again, they would pop a tent up later in the evening. That used to be a part of it. I know we've all fatigued and forgotten that part, but that's what a lot of homeless camping used to look like before we hit this critical mass area. And so all of this is important that folks continue to report. to not allow the area in front of your building to become kind of a sanctuary of just other things going on, because anytime you've got a lot of these camps going on, they are beacons for other criminal activity. It's why we see 20 and 30 bikes at a site. It's why we see drugs dealt out of sites that haven't been moved for a while, and they become these hubs. So we have to stay on them so they aren't the hubs, and that hub criminal behavior that is actually hiding behind homeless laws ceases to be such of a problem here. And those who are homeless and are seeking to not be homeless have access to those sanctioned sites, and we can move them into the services. And that is the continuum as we talk about it, but it relies on all of us to continue to report so that the teams that Ann and I work with can continue to abate and make sure that folks are not plopping down and creating long-term encampments that are all the other problems we've talked about.
We do have a question in the chat about, I don't know if we know this yet, Eric and Ann, about the sanctioned campsites. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, so yes, the sanctioned campsite is referral, meaning we do not want this to be a place where folks are queuing up outside and creating that line that we've seen, right? That's not what this is, but it's not criteria subject to what urban alchemy, that's criteria subject to what the city determines in terms of our outreach workers. So Urban Alchemy is our agent who will be running the campsite. They are not our determining agent for who gets in that sense. And the city is we're hiring our own outreach workers. We hope that the joint office will be involved eventually, but we're doing our own piece here too. And so yes, it is referral. I see another one. Let me just read it quickly.
It's just mostly encouraging use next door because you get to see the deep.
Tim, I understand the next door piece. I also have been on it. I also think that it's a place for, depending on what neighborhood you're in, it can be a pretty toxic group to be on, and it can be less productive than just informing folks or doing reports as it relates to what's actually going on in a real city problem versus the online bitching and moaning that the social media kind of allows us all to do from behind our keyboards. And I don't find next door to be very helpful in those things unless there is somebody there who is also making sure that they are taking that information from it and getting it reported into either the 311 system or the police system. But what we don't know, we don't know.
I'd like to differ with you
Sure.
strongly on that. The next door sites that I'm on, Sobey Island, St. John's, have continuing and countless numbers of gunshots reported in St. John's, reports of people's stolen cars that are not turned in to the police. No one reports stolen bikes anymore. They don't even talk about it on Nextdoor any longer, where they used to in the past. So if someone, if someone with a discerning mind looks at those comments, it's easy to weed out the people who are just complaining from the people who love Portland very much, from people whose neighborhoods have been destroyed by motorhomes, drugs, crime,
Sure.
garbage, and all that stuff. And those are voluminous numbers of comments on Nextdoor from every neighborhood in the city. So to say those folks are, just complainers is not true. A lot of those
Tim,
folks,
come on, but in any world of reality, if we think that a report about a gunshot on Nextdoor is ever going to make it to the police, I have to tell you, please God, don't let your neighbors think that. It will not. That is a 911 call if you have shots fired in the neighborhood. And it is different than if there's a discussion about, hey, I heard it also. And look, I'm here, I'm in these conversations in my own neighborhoods as well. But to think that the police are going to scan a Nextdoor thread for that, I want to level set. We are not, and we're not going to ask them to do that.
And I'm not asking the police to scan that. I'm asking people who are policymakers to get an understanding for the real feelings of the folks out there.
Okay.
It appears to a lot of us that Portland has elevated accepting unacceptable behavior to an art form never before seen in any city in the United States. we have a big heart, we try hard, but a lot of our actions have just been futile in actually protecting our friends, our neighbors, our families, our elderly. So that's
Sure.
my reason for commenting. And
No, that's okay. And Tim, I appreciate that. I will also tell you, each week I hear from somebody who is shocked that they got their bike back. You know, it seems like a low level steal, but then actually folks do get bikes back. So please encourage folks, if they had shit stolen off their porch, get it into a report, because you never know. Because we got the bike chop shop idea put into this time, place, and manner specifically for what you're referencing, which is these homeless camps. They look like homeless camps, but really they're just criminal enterprises that are stealing and chopping up bikes and other vehicles and stuff like that. That is part of why we're doing it, because it has such an undue livability effect across every street in the Portland neighborhoods. And so I do think it's responsive. I do think that people understand that there is a level that we have grown to put up with now because we think there's no response. That folks on this call, Eric represents your guys' interest with us all the time. And we mostly talk about this low level type of crime that has huge impacts on livability. There can be as many disagreements in City Hall as there are topics, but I will say, even with those I disagree with, I think a lot of folks understand that livability crimes are having a huge impact on people's faith in Portland right now. And it's not a lack of knowledge, but right now it's a lack of the systems to attack them. And we're trying to design systems that can actually attack these things. But it's a genuine request that if you have neighbors who experience some sort of crime, theft in particular, because a lot of us gave up on reporting that, I hope they will report it though. And the number of cars and the number of bikes that actually do get returned to folks is higher than I think most of us expect. It's not great, but it is higher. And that makes a big difference if that's somebody's transportation each day.
So both Erics, I know Eric Cole, we are over 4 minutes, but I did see
I know,
some-
I'm a freak about stopping on time, but go ahead.
well, no, I just saw some of Shelley's questions that
Yeah.
she had sent over, and I think we dealt with police. Neighborhood patrolling, that's Eric, but there aren't enough. I mean, they do neighborhood patrolling out of the precincts. They're still not staffed up to an adequate level. What is the opinion responsible for graffiti? I think we talked about that. I mean, I will say in a nutshell, what's fascinating to me about graffiti is, so there's public graffiti, there's private graffiti. There's, we the city will clean graffiti off of per the city code. If you're a small business that's not a franchise, if it's under 8 feet, and if you sign a waiver, we will come. We won't do paint matching, but we can remove the graffiti. It is a responsibility of private property owners to remove graffiti. And then it is our responsibility to remove graffiti off of city assets. What is the status of animal control agencies and what are their responsibilities? That is with the county. Along with, I am not pointing fingers, that is not why I'm saying this, but anything around health, drugs, parole, because one piece is get folks arrested, and then what happens when they get arrested, right? Can they be held? Is it going to be a charge, right? So we work with, it's a continuum, and the county is there as well. I think we talked about street response. And then I think the only thing there, Shelley, you had 2 questions, Eric, about gang patrol or plan for gang activities and what is happening with gangs in Portland and what is the short and long-term strategy. That was, I think, Shelley, that's the only thing we haven't touched on from your questions.
Well, what we can do, I mean, if you guys are up for it, Eric or Ann, maybe if there's somebody from PPB we should have come in, we could do another one of these.
Yeah. I think there's a bunch of stuff here on.
Let me just, we are deeply involved in gun related crimes, and as they relate to gangs, it has certainly gone through some evolutions, but we're deeply involved with it. We also took Old Town, we established the entertainment district, as you're aware, down there. Thursday or Friday and Saturday nights, we staff it up with a specialty unit. We close it down to vehicular traffic. And we went from war zone type shootings in the summer of 2022, last year, to 0 since we instituted that entertainment district. And that has been a big change. So We have some mechanisms that are working and we're expanding. There is a question I see from Meg about how many campsites currently exist. So unsanctioned campsites, we estimate somewhere above 600 across 148 square miles of the city. And the next place for that question was how many sanctioned sites. The city council has authorized up to 6 sanctioned campsites. We're opening one within a couple of weeks. A second one will be opening within a couple months after that. And then we'll just kind of keep on rolling as we increase that capacity.
And can I
Thank
just-
you. Thank you. Oh, and you got something else? Sorry.
I was just
Nope.
gonna say thank you, first of all, and then also just as kind of a matter of good faith. So what I'm hearing is if there are problems, report problems. That's the number one thing I'm hearing. And then the other thing that I was just gonna say is, and this is just more for your groups that you're working with and for the mayor's office. If there's any way to start doing things that are positive to restore, public faith in our city, and to get more of the positive things out there so we can all start feeling a little bit better about this
Absolutely.
city that we love.
Yes. Instead of covering every business that closes, start covering every business that opens,
right.
which, by the way, Portland just took home more James Beard Awards this
Saw
week
that.
than any other city. We have to keep doing our praise because a lot of people are doing really creative stuff in this city. And we have to get over this self-hating thing that we probably deserved at one point, but we're growing out of, and it's us. That's a community thing, right? That we're thinking about as well. I agree with you, Shelley. We got to push it.
One of my favorite things about what we do with RPC is we've got a subcommittee that's focused specifically on public image, and that we met with Eric and the mayor's office recently, and that was part of what we committed to do, was kind of telling more of the positive stories and more of the solution things that are happening too. So that's my pitch for that subcommittee, or also for our crime and public safety subcommittee also. So this is great. Really appreciate everybody's time. And Eric, thanks. I know how busy you all are. Appreciate your time. We did record it, and we'll put something up on our. We'll do a blog post that gives all the information and links too. So
Great.
Thanks for organizing it, Eric. You guys being involved is a big help.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a good day. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.